Hi, welcome back everybody to another episode of Rapping with the Rep. I'm State Representative Ken Gordon, and I'm excited that we're going to have another really interesting show here. We are going to be talking with the fire chiefs from Bedford and from Burlington, Chief Dave Grunes from Bedford and Chief Steve Yetman from Burlington. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the same topics that we were discussing with the police chiefs that in our last episode, which are the ways that, in your case, the fire departments have gotten involved with our community in the non-emergency senses and the non-traditional senses, because when that time comes when we as residents have to call 911 and seek your services in the case of a fire or another emergency, we're comfortable, and we've had these involvements in other areas all along. And the reason for that is that, you know, we look around the country and we see conflict in other areas, which I don't see here at all. And there's a reason for that. And I think the reason for that, at least because here, is we work together all the time, and we have a good give and take. What are some of the programs in the two towns where you serve as chief that you've put in place to really create that type of cooperation and communication between the community and the departments?
Well, we have, in Burlington, we have a good working relationship with other town departments. We party with the Council on Aging, and we do a program every year to install smoke detectors and CO detectors in seniors' homes. We've been doing it for a number of years. So they send out an outreach worker with the firefighters into the homes. They coordinate the program, they make the lists, and we go out. We actually do the installation. So I believe in last year we went to 70 homes and probably installed 180 detectors.
Are those opportunities for you to talk to the seniors about,
Absolutely,
you know,
absolutely.
about
Yeah, we
things other
send
than
two
that?
guys go out and they do the installation, the outreach workers with the firefighters, and they have the communication with the elder.
Are there instances where the inspector would come back and say, well, that went well, but you know what, there's some things that we might be able to do for that senior who, you know, may be at risk in different ways?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's more on the Council on Aging side of it with the outreach worker that, you know, may notice something, or the firefighters for that matter, and then we can address other issues that might pop up on our visit.
In Bedford, are there other programs with the seniors as well?
There are. The fire department, again, has worked with the Council on Aging and done some training with them, but there's not a lot of new initiatives with us. Is the root of the relationship is that the firefighters themselves are very vested in the community. They really believe in the community, and they enjoy working with the community members and enjoy their job, enjoy protecting them. So some of the initiatives that we partake in are because of the change of dynamic of the community, whether we do have firefighters involved in task force associated with the opioid crisis that we're in right now, as new areas of treatment and identification become more prevalent with the seniors. We've done some recent dementia training. We've done some training that is timely based on things that we're seeing. But the true connection between the fire department and the community has been in place in both of our communities for long before I was a chief. It's the nature of the job is the firefighters that join our departments are there to help the community and to participate in the community, and they participate in many ways. Is off duty, to the coaches, to the folks you see down at the supermarket, you see them at the bank, and you develop this comfort level. And on duty is we host car washes, we let people come in and, you know, wash the fire trucks, we do fire station tours, we are in the schools, we're in the Council on Aging. So yeah.
Plus,
Yeah,
in both
that's-
communities, I mean, in Bedford as well as Burlington, I mean, I've got 58 uniformed members. We all grew up in Burlington, and I'm sure it's the same with Bedford. So you grew up in town. Someone's bound to know you when you go to a call.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great advantage. Is that the
It is,
same
yeah.
as Bedford too?
It's primarily it's the same. One thing is we did transition to ALS paramedics, is we did hire some paramedics from outside the community, but the paramedics that we hired have this drive to serve and participate in the fire department. Tradition of the fire department is participating in the community and being being part of the community. We've hired some great folks who are part of that, who bought into that, and themselves are out there. Is one of the programs that we do is we do a CPR first aid for the public, and actually some of the newest members of our department who did grow up outside the community just volunteered to become CPR instructors and start participating in that.
Yeah, and just become part of the community.
Yeah.
And I know in Burlington, you just did the safety.
Yeah, we did a
event.
public safety night. It was hosted by Wegmans. It was the day after the national night, so we actually had great participation. Combination of Burlington Police and Burlington Fire with outside agencies. We had somebody from the Department of Fire Services. We had something from the Sheriff's Department. I mean, there was a lot of apparatus there, and it was very, very well attended.
Yeah, as you said, some of these programs may have been in place before you got there, but you certainly enhanced them because both of you have such a vibrant department. As a parent of now a teenager, but when he was a younger child, you know, that's the departments where we turned first. First we got help, you know, as young parents, and then the various programs that you have, the car washes, the fire engine washes. They're all opportunities for us to look around and the kids to look around and realize that when that day comes that we may have to call 911, these are people that we're familiar with coming to our homes.
Right, and we're coming up on Fire Prevention Week, so we'll be having an open house at some point, and you know, we get involved with the boot drive that's coming up. I believe that's the weekend of the 26th, 27th, 28th.
So talk about Fire Prevention Week. What goes on there?
Usually have an open house that we invite the public in for a set number of hours. We try and get they have a safe house, which is kind of like a trailer set up, and we fill it with smoke and, you know, the avenues of escape, and show you how smoke detectors work and stuff like that. And we'll set up a bunch of stations for the kids. We should be doing that this fall.
Do you do things in the schools?
Yeah, we do. We're part of that SAFE program, so our fire prevention division goes out and goes into the schools and gives educational components.
How about in Bedford?
We do. We have a firefighter Nick Anderson, who does this as well as our fire prevention folks. And that's a nice conscious effort. Is they get in, they shake hands, they provide safety messages, they provide homework to the students. One of the things that I do receive feedback from the public about is when firefighter Anderson's in the schools and he gives a homework assignment. Because part of the homework assignment is usually to have the parents sign off on that they checked the smoke detectors, or they did a escape route from the house. And the parent comes up to me and says, geez, I know you're in the schools because, you know, my son came home or my daughter came home and said X, Y, Z, and we never thought of that before. And the other real benefit about having firefighter Anderson and fire prevention in the schools is really at 2 o'clock in the morning when we're dressed in our turnout gear and we have our masks on, we have the potential to look scary.
Right.
Especially to a younger child. So knowing who's behind that suit, allowing them to try the suits on, is very beneficial. It makes our job easier in the middle of the night when we are there for an emergency, is developing that bond with the public.
I mean, that's a great point, and that's important. If that child has seen the firefighter with the mask on and off,
Right.
and then that person is on the window, they realize, oh, I know who that is, even though I can't see his face or her face.
And we try and get out there as often as we can. We go to schools, we have groups come in, and we do the same thing. It's, you know, you get to get the guys to dress up so they're not scared when the real situation happens.
Are there incidents you can remember where you talked to a child in a school and then later met them on the emergency part of the job where it was a benefit?
I myself just happened to be, when I was a new firefighter, I happened to be working where I was assigned up to the school as part of a presentation with the fire prevention folks. And it was part of a nice play, puppet show. The following day, one of the children that was in that show actually became severely injured. And I was on a fire truck that was a little late arriving on the scene, and the first 2 fire trucks that arrived provided the initial care to the patient. The patient was very sick. When I arrived on scene with my lieutenant at the time, she recognized me from the day before.
From
It
school.
was just that little, which is what highlighted why the program in the schools and just our connection to the public is so important. Because I talked to the mother afterwards, I still talk to the mother, and she still remembers that day. And the daughter still talks about the day where the firefighter who presented the puppet show the day before was the one that was in the house for the emergency the following day.
Yeah, it's an amazing story, and thank you for being there and doing that, because it makes such a difference. And you know, when the kids are coming into the stations and getting involved with the programs that you have, I'm sure that the firefighters aren't thinking, you know, there may come a day when one of these families really needs us and all, because at that time there's a lot of smiles and laughs. But we know, and that you're doing it for that very reason. And these are important reasons. One of the crises that I know that you have been involved with is the opioid crisis. And here in Massachusetts, it's reaching epidemic proportions, and we've got to continue to deal with the ease with which these new drugs and inexpensive drugs are available. Are there programs that you have or have heard about that can help us to address these situations? Or the responses to them, I should say, as the fire department.
Speaking for Bedford, is we have a representative that participates in the Middlesex DA's opioid crisis team. There's also a regional team set forward with kind of Middlesex police chiefs. We have participation in that as well. In Bedford, there's a regional grant, and we try to have, if we have an opioid incident at a house in the community, we try to have the woman that's associated with this grant, the social worker, follow up with that person a day later, 2 days later, just to see if they can offer help. And
Yeah.
help is not always received. It's always appreciated, but people don't always take you up on the help.
Yeah.
And that's what we notice with the opioid crisis, especially now. The serious people with the addiction, we're seeing repetitively.
Right.
Yeah. Is that the same, Steve, in
Yeah, it's the same.
Burlington?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a drug and alcohol task force. It's kind of chaired by our Youth and Family Services Director. So I believe our last meeting we had like 20 to 25 participants in it. So it's different departments. It's, you know, it's the Board of Health, it's the schools, it's the fire, it's the police, and Youth and Family Services, some church organizations and stuff like that. So we're trying to address the issue.
Are there incidents where you realize that one or more of your firefighters has made a difference, or EMT officers, in the life of someone trying to deal with this crisis?
Well, the ability to use Narcan is, you know, obviously bringing these people back if we can get there soon enough. I just recently received a thank you note from a woman in Burlington that thanked us for, we responded, and like Chief Grunes said, you know, you get these repeat, you know, problems, and we had gone to this person's house several times, and you know, unconscious, unresponsive, and brought her son back on numerous occasions, and she wanted to thank us for our efforts. The heartbreaking part about it was her son eventually succumbed to an overdose in Bedford.
Yeah.
But she just wanted, she took the time, you know, after the wake and after the funeral to write a letter and thank us for our efforts.
Yeah. Like you see, even in the face of that tragedy, to have someone who realizes that you did, you know, everything you could.
Right.
And you know, going back to the start of this conversation, that's why I think the residents in Burlington and in Bedford understand that, you know, we have friends among our first responders in this district, so that when that time comes, we know where to go for safety, and you folks provide that. What are some? Go ahead, Chief.
I think Chief Yetman just touched on it. But one thing that is important to recognize is it's not just the fire department, the police department. It really is just like the opioid task force that he spoke of. Is we have something very similar, you know, an alcohol and drug task force in Bedford. So it is the youth and family, it's the health, COA is applicable. All of us work together. So
Right.
all of the town departments, boards and committees, really, we communicate well, and I know it's the same in both communities.
Yeah.
So, you know, as a community, as public service employees to the community, we're all working together to provide safety back to the residents.
Yeah, yeah, and that's
really-
one thing, you're right, I noticed that in both towns is people have good ideas, but we also, in our town, listen to each other's idea and then work together you know, and in unison, or together, I should say, you know, things get done.
Yeah.
And in cooperation, things get done, and
Yeah,
it's been that way.
It's working well in both communities. Like I said, the firefighters have a relationship with the COA. We just recently had a senior cookout and stuff like that. But I mean, we have a hoarding task force in Burlington. We have a development coordinators group that talks about the ongoing projects and development in Burlington. You know, it's great because all these departments. We have an emergency task force because I don't know about how it works in Bedford, but the fire department's also emergency management. So we've just partnered with the Board of Health, and we've used their medical reserve corps, and we've just run some sheltering scenarios and some training. So it's the great relationships between the departments too.
When you mentioned the hoarding task force, I think that's something that many people don't know about. What is that? How does that work? I know the threat of hoarding in a residence. I think that's a fire hazard, right?
It is, and you know, and it's the unseen problem. We usually no one's going to come forward and say I have a hoarding issue. It's the outreach worker from COA. It's the fire department going for an ambulance call to this residence, and that's how you initiate. You find the problem, and then we bring it back to the task force and see what services we can get, you know, to help these people.
What's, just so that our viewers understand, what is a hoarding problem? Just describe what you would find that would.
Well, there's different stages. It depends upon. I mean, it can start as minor as cluttering, but I mean, you can walk into some houses that are pretty scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Chief?
Well, I think as Chief Yetman's starting to speak about is Bedford has a hoarding task force as well. And one thing that's important to recognize, and this goes along with the opioid task force too, is hoarding really is, it's a marker for a larger issue that the person may be having. And we're not, so as a first responder, there are times that we may see a trend, we may see that this person may be nearing a crisis for some other reason. But we also recognize, and this is a very important part of both these task forces, is we recognize the home's a castle, and we want people to call us for an emergency, and we're not going to intrude on their rights as a person, but if we do recognize something, we will offer a service to that person. So we don't not want them to call, and we're not going to break down their door if we see a hoarding issue or we see an issue, but we are going to, if they're willing to accept, we are going to offer a service to them. Yeah.
Right. As you said before, you can suggest things to people and you can offer help to people, but you can't require that they take it in those instances. Where, you know, and I appreciate that.
That's a balance that I always find with the task force is I never want somebody to be scared to call 911 because they're afraid of what the follow-up's going to be afterwards.
Right.
If they need us, please call us. And that's kind of the most, you know, that's really kind of the most important thing is you never don't want to call because you're embarrassed because of whatever the situation might be, is we're there to help, you know. That's what the departments are for.
Sure.
And some of the things that you do in an emergency situation outside of the traditional fires that we would think about include a lot of medical services, and I know both of your departments has been involved even recently in delivering babies. Can you talk about that? Because that's a pretty special time in a crisis.
It can be. Yeah, we recently, within the last couple of months, we had a woman that was in labor, and we get those calls all the time, but it was a complicated pregnancy, and the gentleman were actually transporting her to Brigham and Women's in Boston, and she delivered on Route 93.
Right on the side of the highway.
Right on the side of the highway.
And was the baby and the mom healthy?
Yeah, they actually had to divert and go to Winchester. The baby did have to be transported in town, and then when the baby was examined and treated, they were able to bring the baby back to be with the mother back in Winchester.
Congratulations for that. I know in Bedford there were, how many? There were multiple times.
So it was actually 3. And I can actually almost joke about one of them right now as I'm listening to Chief Yetman's story. So 2 of them, the folks delivered at the house because the people were ready to deliver. But the 3rd baby was delivered in that special parking spot on 93 because, again, our ambulance was on the way into Boston with the patient, and she couldn't wait either. So we pulled over into that parking spot on 93, delivered the baby, and then brought the baby over to Winchester Hospital. So it does happen. There's a balance. The firefighters have to through their medical training, determine how far along the mother is, get her to the safest place. Sometimes the safest place is to deliver at the house, but we try to get them to the hospital. But it's not uncommon halfway to the hospital to have to pull over and deliver the baby.
So that's how you ended up on 93. You were taking the baby, well, the mom,
Taking the mom
to the hospital and
Right,
said, okay, we
right.
can't get much further than this.
Correct.
True.
And in the instances in Bedford, 93, were each of these successful? The baby's fine, the mom's
All
fine?
three were
Every-
successful.
everything
Yeah,
works?
we they delivered 2 boys and a girl, I believe. And yeah, it was great just seeing the firefighters, because we see so much tragedy in our lives. Just the firefighters just were very proud of it, and they all did a fantastic job. And it's something that they could talk about in a very positive way. It's just seeing them and how it affected them. It's fantastic.
What a difference! I mean, they made a difference not only in the life of the family, the parents, but the child's going to have a story, the whole life. And what a great story. In both towns, I know sometimes I was involved in the Little League with my son and soccer and all that, and your firefighters seem to get involved in a big way with supporting the youth sports and other youth activities, coaching. And all. Is that something that you encourage them to get involved with and do?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We actually provide some first aid training to the coaches and stuff like that. And yeah, a lot of our guys are involved in youth sports.
Bedford as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that they do it, but a lot of them do it because of the type of person they are, which is what made them good firefighters. These are the folks that are out there. We do have folks who are hockey coaches and baseball coaches, which is what makes them such good firefighters.
Well, a lot of parents would like to do it, but their schedule really doesn't allow it if they work in town or something like that. But it sounds like you work with their firefighters to try to give them some flexibility so that they can participate with the kids in that way. And then the kids who are, I know they'll work with their son or daughter, like we all do, but then the other kids get to know them, and it spreads out that benefit of, again, I know firefighter, so-and-so, and it adds to that level of comfort.
Yeah, it's funny, and as I was talking about, a lot of that tradition is I remember playing Little League in Bedford, and one of my first coaches was a firefighter. And actually, I remember actually 2 of my coaches. One of them used to bring down the old fire department pickup truck during some of the practices while he was on duty, just to watch us while the other one coaches. So this has been going on in our communities for 40 some odd years anyways.
Yeah, and both, I bet, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just the fire department; it's the police department too. They
Right.
run a dare camp during the summer, and the firefighters go over and participate in the dare camp. Middlesex County Sheriff runs a weekly program
Right.
where they come to the towns. They came to Burlington this year. They come to Burlington every year, and they'll spend one day, half the morning, in the police department, and the afternoon in the fire department, and then we go up at the end of the week for the graduation.
Right. Well, you also run field trips for the kids in the elementary school to come to the departments and, and see what you do there as well.
Absolutely.
Right? Have you noticed? Has there been an increase in the type of involvement from the community with the firefighters, or has it been this level of communication all along? It may very well have been the same way all along, but I don't know if
I
things have
think
changed.
it's changed. I mean, I think years and years ago, I mean, I'm talking decades, there wasn't as much involvement. It was different. It was more like maybe, I can remember way back when, it was Cub Scouts and stuff like that. And it's broadened out to a bunch of things now. So, it's not limited.
Yeah, I would agree. I think some of the participation now is a little bit more organized. I do remember, some of the memories when I was a child. I remember going to the fire station. I remember the Cub Scout troop, taking a tour of the fire station. I remember, the firefighters coaching us, and the feeling of, oh, Mr. So-and-so is a firefighter, and it's good to know that person. It was a status symbol back when you were a kid, or a police officer, same. But we have branched out more into the task force and to other areas. But I think the connection to the community has always been there. But I also think things are changing a little bit too. As our departments are getting so busy, is when I was young and we took a tour of the fire station as a Cub Scout, you knew the firefighters were going to be there because they weren't as busy as they are now. You know, an example is we used to host birthday parties for children. We just can't guarantee anymore that the firefighters are going to be there for a long enough duration to host these parties. So there's things are changing as well, is because the department's getting so busy with the medical calls and other investigations. Is our scope of business is no longer fighting fires. It's become so diverse as we look at, you know, fuel spills and hazardous material leaks and power line down and, you know, into sheltering during emergencies. It just, the demand on us has become so diverse that we don't have as much time. It's luckily we have some folks assigned to it, but we don't have as much time as we used to for some of the bigger things.
No, absolutely.
It sounds like it's because our communities are growing.
Yeah.
Some of those things you would have always done, but
It is.
there's
I mean,
more people here now.
Yeah.
And I know it's in Burlington, for example, the business community has grown so quickly.
Oh, yeah.
The daytime population. that
Yeah,
you've
it's the
got to keep-
daytime population. I mean, Burlington has gradually increased the residential population. I think we're 25,100 now, but it's the daytime population. I mean, you hear numbers of 150,000 people in
Right.
Burlington during the day. It's a city during the day.
It is, and you have to adapt. And I think Bedford is not quite there as far along, but is certainly more, there's more congestion, certainly on, you know, the Great Wood area than there has been.
But, you know, bringing up the businesses, that is, they are part of our community as well. And it's kind of changed our focus a little bit too, as you've seen Bedford grow over the past few years, is, you know, back, you know, 10 years ago or so, is we noticed there was a real influx of R&D companies in town, a lot of biopharmaceutical companies. And so we established a working group with all of the folks in that field with our fire prevention, and we were having annual meetings of how to safely store chemicals, how to work with your chemicals. And we're introducing them to each other as well, so they may not need to rely on the fire department. If they had a release, they could borrow X from Y from their neighbors. So we're working as a fire department to make the businesses better neighbors as well, and then introducing them to each other. So that's, you know, as I'm thinking how things have changed a little bit over the years, is we're really starting to include the businesses in proactively reaching out to them and trying to meet them under non-emergent circumstances as well.
Right. So there's involvement and there's education, it sounds like, and that component as well.
Yeah. And we do walkthroughs for local businesses. I think there's close to 500 businesses in Burlington. We try and hit every business with the on-duty companies during the year. It's kind of an inspection, but it's a walkthrough. It just the familiarization and the contact.
Yeah, you've got the remodeling going on, and I know with there are new liquor licenses coming in. We in the State House were involved with that. That I'm sure brings in some issues with the police department, but also it makes the towns a little bit more vibrant and busy for all the first responders, and changes a little bit. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time. I appreciate you coming on to Rapping with the Rep. I visited the fire departments recently, and I was able to say something that I'd like to repeat to you now, because as state representative, I get some of these really neat opportunities, and one is to sit beside both of the chiefs of the fire chiefs in our communities and tell you that as a resident of our district, I really appreciate the work that you do. And I think many of our residents, if given the opportunity, would want to say the same thing, is thank you. Thank you for being there for us, for keeping us safe, and thinking about all the ways that you can make our lives better. So Chief Grunes, thank you. Chief Yetman, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on Rapping with the Rep, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time here on Rapping with the Rep.